Hi again, you guys. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jennifer Lynn Adams. I am here telling my extra abled story. If you haven't subscribed, please do so below. Also, please follow me on Instagram at We Are Extra Abled. And I also have a Facebook group called We Are Extra Abled. You can join. The Facebook group is specifically for extra abled people to post reviews of products, thoughts, ideas, challenges, just really anything extra abled or adaptive related. So if you are an extra abled person, please go add yourself to the group and we can get some good conversations going. Today's video is going to be random thoughts and musings as of late in my head. As I was going to plan this video, I was like, I don't have anything specifically, like a specific topic I want to talk about, but I have several random things that I just have been kind of floating around in my mind that I'd like to share. The first being, I recently watched on Netflix a movie called The Gospel of Matthew. And I really, really, really liked it. For anyone who watches this that is a Christian, I highly, or even if you're not a Christian, actually, I highly recommend watching The Gospel of Matthew. What I really love about it is they actually capture the Jewish culture. The people who act in this movie are Jewish, and they're speaking in Aramaic, and it is narrated by it is narrated in English, but it perfectly captures, I think it does the best of any movie I've ever seen, the essence of Christ. And after I was finished watching it, I was so inspired by what I learned from it that I made a little voice clip so that I wouldn't forget what I was thinking. So here's that voice clip. It's just a little bit of something that I learned from watching The Gospel of Matthew. I am watching The Gospel of Matthew on Netflix. There are things in the Gospel that I never even thought of, but as I'm watching it played out, it visually, it's making so much more sense. Like when Jesus talks about the Pharisees and how they have all these labels and that they put a lot of burdens on those under them, but they never lift a finger, and they want these high places and of seats, you know, the best seats with the best titles, and yet they won't make any sacrifices or suffer for anything that they quote unquote believe in. And then he says, you know, to his followers, like, don't take any titles, you're all brothers and sisters. And don't call anyone anything too high because your teacher is the Messiah. He's the only one that needs the highest title. And I'm thinking, this breaks everything that I've ever learned about the church. I mean, he even says, don't call anyone father because you have a father in heaven. I mean, the Catholic Church calls their priests father. And I grew up Catholic. It's just like, boom, in my head, you know? And then at the Garden of Gethsemane, when he's telling the disciples to wake up and pray, he's saying that, you know, so that you won't be tempted and you can resist the flesh. He was saying that so that they would have the strength to not betray him as he went to the cross that day. And the third time that he tried to wake them up, he just left it, and he realized, he went and prayed a third time in this deep sorrow and sadness, realizing that even his own disciples would not go with him, that he would have to bear the cross by himself. Boom. And then when he's on the cross and they give him the wine vinegar, I always thought that that was just to like satisfy his thirst, but it's actually like a drug to make the pain more tolerable, and he refused it. So it's such an example of sobriety to us that even as he was suffering on the crucifixion, he chose sobriety. Boom. Also, another random thought. I recently posted on Instagram and Facebook on my stories one of the little polls, like if you have a question, please ask me and I'll answer it. And I really only got one response. I'm not that famous yet, but I'm hoping someday I'll get more than that. But I did think that it was a question worth answering on here. The question was, what is your disability in detail? As you know, I use the word extra abled. I find it more empowering, but my actual diagnosis is a word that I have never been able to pronounce. It's like 13 letters long, but the gist of it and what it means is congenital limb loss, meaning that I was born missing all four of my limbs, and the truth is that there is actually no scientific explanation as to why I was born missing limbs. It's not, it didn't have to do with my DNA. The only thing that they can pin it to is that my birth mom had a lot of issues with fertility, and she had many miscarriages prior to having me. And they're thinking that it was something environmental in the womb that sort of interrupted the development process. But it wasn't chromosomal, and it's not something I can pass on to future children or anything. It was just an environmental interruption in my development in the womb. So, with that said, that is what my diagnosis is. You know, I accept that, and I have done my best to make the best of my circumstances in my life, which you'll probably see just by watching other YouTube videos of me, that I really do my best to be unstoppable, whilst, and I've made videos about this. In fact, watch this video that I'm linking right here, that talks about accepting my limitations, and understanding, like finding a greater understanding that I'm always going to be somebody that's missing limbs, which means that I can tap in to my energy and I can tap into my potential, but in that I also need to accept my limitations and my fallacies and all the things that make me me. And that's been a process, because I used to run myself into the ground trying to keep up with the able-bodied world. So let's talk about that. It's actually something that's been rolling around in my head about ableism. And I think that many of you out there that are extra abled can super relate to this. I think a lot of the reasons why we run ourselves ragged is because there's a lot of pressure to keep up with ableism. And also, let's just throw in there that every American, I'm specifically talking to Americans, feels a pressure to push themselves beyond the limits of their own bodies sometimes to keep up with their careers, their aspirations, and in a lot of ways, we reward being haggard and tired in our culture. Like, oh, you work so much and you work so hard, and you know, you work yourself to the bone. Good for you. And I've actually developed a little bit more of a European vibe to my life, which is I work a few hours a day, and I also give myself permission to rest and relax and regenerate, the 3 R's. So back to ableism though. So on top of being American, as American extra abled people, on top of being workaholics, we also are dealing with our own physical limitations, whether that is a chronic illness, whether that is a physical um, limitation like me missing limbs, whether that is having a challenge within how your muscles move or how your mind works. All of these things are limitations. But I think what helps us overcome them is to recognize how those limitations play out in our lives and to give ourselves permission that we don't need to prove ourselves to the point that we run ourselves ragged and haggard trying to show the world that is very ableistic that we're good enough, that we can keep up with them, that we're no different than them, that our limitations don't, label us. I think it's important to show, yes, our value. We have value because we're human beings. We have value because we have human rights, and we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not because we are proving ourselves to be just like everyone else. So, in that vein, I would say if you are able-bodied, catch yourself in ableism, which is basically favoring those who are able-bodied, and not favoring people who are extra abled or disabled or have limitations, and thinking that the world is better when people that are extra abled or however they identify in their limitations, that the world is better if they aren't on the same platform as you. Catch yourself in that, because in putting that on society, it creates a lot of tension, and it creates a lot of unnecessary pain in people's lives who are extra abled, who are trying to prove that they're worthy to be in your world. So if you want to break ableism, which I hope you do, first of all, stop trying to prove, well, my suggestion would be to not try to prove that you're a workaholic American that, is a high achiever, or however you play that out, but also to not put that on people who are extra able. Another thought that I have had recently, something that I do a lot is I do a lot of research in regards to the extra abled community, because it's something I super care about. And it's the whole reason that this channel exists. And, I've also written books, and I used to be Miss Wheelchair America, and I traveled a lot speaking on these issues of inclusion. But one statistic that I came across just a couple days ago was the statistic of the increase in reports of extra abled people, or what they're called through DSHS is vulnerable adults. So I have some statistics that I ran into through the Washington State DSHS website, that from 2010 until now, reports of vulnerable adults being abused have gone up exponentially. From, if I can remember correctly, I'm actually going to post right here the chart so you can see the specifics of these statistics. But it went from something like 10,000 to 70,000 within a decade. So what that shows me is that the issue of oppression, or just the system that cares for extra abled people and vulnerable adults, is not working. So what that means for me is, as an extra abled person myself, but also as an advocate for the extra abled community, something needs to change. I want to be a huge part of that change. I want to be part of the solution. I think a huge aspect of this is a lack of resources for independent housing for people, for vulnerable adults that require care for their everyday lives. So, a very big goal that I have is through my entrepreneurial endeavors, I want to create a program that provides quality housing for vulnerable adults or extra abled adults who need extra care for their independence, so that it is not relying on family members or just members of the community that have less than good intentions. I think a lot of families do a great job. Just, I don't want to throw all families under the bus here. There's a lot of families who care for their extra abled family members in a very edifying and wonderful way. And truth be told, I think that a lot of what might be reported is just families that are exhausted. Their resources are exhausted. They're caring for their extra able children well into their elderly years. And with that, a lot of things can kind of just fall through the cracks. And so it's not all poor intentions. Some of it is just circumstantial. And what that means is, as a society, we need to be looking at this issue. We need to be talking about this issue. We need to raise awareness about this issue. And we need to do something about this issue. We can't just ignore it and say, well, they're only extra abled people, so it doesn't really matter. It super matters, because they are human members of our societies. Those are the thoughts that I have to share today. They're pretty heavy, and like this video if you like it, and also comment below if you have something to add. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Like I said, subscribe to this channel. Go add yourself on my Instagram at We Are Extra Abled. You can go add yourself to my Facebook, Jennifer Lynn Adams. And you can, if you are extra abled, you can join my Facebook group, We Are Extra Abled. And I will see you guys in my next video.